What is up, Packers fans, and welcome to the final episode of the 2024 edition of the Daily Draft. We are brought to you by the good folks here at Badger State Brewing, the makers of this very, very fine lager, Brewski. And that place is located very conveniently just minutes away from beautiful Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I am your host and the publisher, Packer Report, Ross Uglem. And we are here to take some questions and put a bow on this season of the Daily Draft. We will begin right here with the emails that were sent in, and then we'll move to the tweets, and that will be it. We'll see how long, I guess, this takes. Okay. So, first, from Jocelyn, I am still wondering about the talent and depth at corner after Jair. I know Valentine outperformed his draft stock, and maybe they have something in King. I'm not ready to hang my hat on 2 7th-round picks at a premium position. That leaves Stokes. We're just a few interviews away from Stokes being the best shape. I'm trying to make this a little shorter. Maybe Guten MLF do think Stokes will return to his rookie form. All of that confidence in the podium didn't carry over to the contract when Green Bay declined his 5th-year option, which I do understand. Are the Packers confident in him or not? Their actions indicate they aren't. If not, they failed to do anything of significance at the position. Really makes me think they were set on Arnold and or DeJean, and Goot got outmaneuvered. Will be an interesting point of inflection 3 years from now. They might have gotten outmaneuvered on Terrion. I don't think they got outmaneuvered on Cooper DeJean. I think, and I think we're also kind of asking different questions there because I don't know for sure, but I would guess that Green Bay probably was never going to play Cooper DeJean at outside corner. And that's really what we're talking about here, because Green Bay actually addressed the hell out of the slot position. They re-signed Keyshawn Nixon, which is something I wouldn't have done, but they did it. They drafted Javon Bullard, who is a slot player who can play free safety, but is a slot player. They drafted Evan Williams, who can play free safety, but is also a slot player. And they drafted Kalen King, who I believe his best position is nickel, and actually he's the guy I would play there. So they addressed the hell out of the position that I think ultimately Cooper DeJean would have played in Green Bay. I think he would have been a slot area defender with some safety flexibility. Frankly, very similar to what I think they're going to end up doing with Javon Bullard, and just a package that I would have preferred him. He's bigger than Bullard. I think he's a better return man, or I don't know that there's any return capabilities with Bullard. I just had a higher grade on Cooper DeJean. I think they really, truly, for whatever your opinion is, and I am with you, and did not love the tactics that they used. I would have addressed corner. Certainly would have taken TJ Tampa over Evan Williams. I've sort of talked myself into the Evan Williams pick, and wouldn't be surprised if he's a very, very good NFL player, kind of in the way that Micah Hyde was. But I would not have done what they did. So I hope that part of it's clear. With that said, the formula for the 5th-year option on a corner is going to be expensive. It's a premium position. I know he was taken late in round 1, but it's more money than Eric Stokes is going to get, at least on a 1-year deal, unless he is literally like a second-team All-Pro or makes the Pro Bowl this year. The 5th-year option for corners is going to be very much above what you would have wanted to pay Eric Stokes. Look, could it bite him in the ass? Yeah. I mean, if he goes out there and Jair's shutting everything down, and, he shows ball skills that he's never shown, and, gets some picks because he's being targeted, or, at least just holds his own. Yeah, they could get bitten, but I really think that they were willing to roll the dice. I think Corey Ballantyne, who you didn't mention in your email, which is fine, but Corey Ballantyne, who you didn't mention in your email, played better than most realize. I think they feel really good about him being a 4th corner. I think they feel like Carrington Valentine was probably a 3rd or a 4th round player that they got in round 7. They believe he can be a starter. They believe he's shown the ability to be starter. And they're very happy, I think, to just have a Carrington Valentine versus Eric Stokes competition for that outside corner spot. One of them goes down. They're probably pretty fine with playing Valentine. And then obviously you have the Jair Alexander situation. So they think they're fine. And look, like, hey, they don't have to bat 1,000 there. If Jair is everything, I think when I'm recording this, he said something about when he got to the locker room, like the best corner in the league has entered the chat. If they get second team All Pro Jair back, that's already a completely different thing than what has gone on the last couple of years. And if Stokes turns into a pumpkin and Valentine doesn't, you're golden. Or if Valentine is for real and everybody kind of stays healthy, you're golden. They don't need to bat 1,000 because they have 4 reasonable shots here at an outside corner that works. And like I said, they've reinforced the hell out of the inside corner stuff. Even if you don't think Keyshawn Nixon can play, well, you try Bullard, and if that doesn't work, you try Evan Williams, and if that doesn't work, you try Kalen King. Like, they have options there. And not just like options in the sense that there are dudes on the roster, guys I actually like, guys that played well in that spot. So I think, plus there are like veteran safeties out there. If you want to make a more serious move of Evan Williams or Javon Bullard into that slot position, and Oladapo isn't ready, or, whatever, you can just go get Justin Simmons. You can just go get Micah Hyde if you want to make Javon Bullard a nickel because Keyshawn's not working out. So I think there's a lot of options there. I would have taken a corner. I think it's an obvious need in the 2025 NFL draft, but I think they are not lying. I think they believe in Stokes. If not, they believe in Valentine. If not, they believe in Ballantyne. And ultimately, they're just ready to roll with that. And if the Stokes thing doesn't work out, they hope Valentine does. And then you just replace Stokes in the 2025 NFL draft and move forward. So, again, I think the one thing kind of left out of your thoughts, Jocelyn, was how gosh darn expensive the 5th-year option is at the cornerback position, because it would have been a lot of money. Okay, from Ben, thanks for the daily draft. It was fun, helpful to watch. You're very welcome. At the end of the 2024-2025 season, success for Tyron Hopper looks like. So I would just say, good on special teams. If we're being realistic, improved missed tackle rate, whether that be in the preseason, because he's not cracking the rotation. Because right now it seems like at OTAs, it's McDuffie, Cooper, Wilson, Quay that are kind of rotating. Hopper hasn't become a part of that group in OTAs rotating with the ones yet. So if he's a backup linebacker, do a good job on special teams, show you can make plays, clean up missed tackles in preseason. But I think a linebacker too, it's foolish to just assume everybody's going to play the entire season. So a successful season for Tyron Hopper would be 3-4 starts. Don't embarrass yourself. Your missed tackle rate under 15, which would be lower than his college missed tackle rate, and a special team standout, and make me and other people believe that they didn't just burn a pick there. Make me and other people believe that, he and Cooper and Quay could be their long-term plan at the linebacker position, and make people believe that that would be a good idea. So that's what that looks like. More of the 2022 Tyron Hopper. But he's got to work with Campanile. He's got to work with whoever he's got to work with to clean up missed tackles, because as Andy pointed out, and as I have pointed out, even when Hopper was going pretty good in 2022 at Mizzou, he still didn't tackle people. He was more disruptive, did a better job filling gaps. Overall was just a better football player, and damn fine football player, but his missed tackle rate was still too high. So that has to get cleaned up, or he's not going to make it in the league, because he's just going to drive Hafley and Campanile and LaFleur insane. Anyway, okay. Off to the land of Twitter, formerly or currently known as X, formerly known as Twitter. Joe at work, what are realistic expectations of Lucas Van Ness in year 2? I think, similar to the Gary thing, a little bit more of a transition in that he gets to play with his hand in the dirt, but that's what he did at Iowa. Like, Gary played, basically in very similar systems, whether it was Mike Pettin early in his career, and then and obviously Joe Barry. But was always kind of making the transition to outside linebacker. Now Lucas Van Ness is making a transition, but back to what he did at Iowa. So maybe a little bit more comfortable, especially for a guy that Iowa would often kick inside to rush as an interior guy. And I wonder if that isn't a part of his bag in some speed rushing situations this year. Like, I wonder if there's not a NASCAR version if everybody stays healthy with like Lucas at 3 tech, Gary and Preston on the outside, and Kenny Clark and just go, go, go. And that allows you to drop 7. Because I think if Van Ness takes even a slight step forward, I think it'd be really hard to keep Clark, Van Ness, Gary, and Preston Smith in front of you if you're an offensive line. As much as Enigbare, has come through healthy. The one thing I'm gonna wonder or be interested, again, everybody being healthy, will this be a legitimate 2 teams? So will Preston and Gary go out there for the first 2 series, and then does the third defensive series just go to Enigbare and Van Ness? Or does Van Ness sort of spell Gary and or Preston in more of a 3-man rotation, with Enigbare getting like 15 or 20 snaps a game and Lucas getting like 35? Is that more of what they do? As far as the realistic expectations, I would just look for an improvement in pass rush productivity, and pressures. Of course, you'd like the sack numbers to go up, but just continuing to develop a bag. Really, again, when you make that comparison to Gary, one tool in his bag, speed to power. Like, is he developing as a technician? Okay, is he developing pass rush moves? Is he beating offensive tackles in more than one way? Are those things happening? Does he go from a 4-sack guy to a 7-sack guy, and then you hope he becomes an 11-sack guy next year? And that would be the normal development track. I know people have talked about like the Bosa brothers. People have talked about Will Anderson. Well, that's what happens when you have a top 2 pick. Aiden Hutchinson. That was happens when you have a top 2 pick. Where Gary and Van Ness were taken, there needs to be a little bit more of a development track that we're willing to sort of accept. I'm not saying that he can't be disappointing, but I am saying that as Justice Mosqueda says, pass rushers are like quarterbacks. Once you get out of the top 5, there's a different class kind of like within the first round, and then it's really tough to hit on pass rushers at all after round 1. So many of the best pass rushers in the league are first-round picks, and so many of them are like top 5 picks. Back in history, like I said, the Bosa brothers, talk about Von Miller, guys that were taken just super high. Aiden Hutchinson, those top picks are the ones that usually produce immediately. And this year's class, by the way, didn't have one of those guys, and that's why it took so long for any defensive player, especially a pass rusher, to come off the board. Is that this class just didn't have one. And so I think some of that grace that's going to be given to Dallas Turner, some of that grace that's going to be given to Laiatu Latu, we need to sort of have more of a look like that at Van Ness, understanding what a young, raw kind of project he was and was not a top 5 pick. So 7 sacks, increased pressure rate, increased snap count. Those are the things that I would look for. Badger by birth. What are the position battles, starter or roster, you're most excited to see play out? I think it's mostly just the obvious ones. Who is Jordan Morgan battling, and can he make his way into the lineup? Is he somehow battling Sean Ryan? I've said a number of times that I would not move Sean, or excuse me, I would not move Jordan Morgan to the right side and expect him to play right guard. So not only changing from tackle to guard, but changing from left to right as a rookie. I think the last thing, my personal opinion, the last thing the Green Bay Packers should do with Jordan Morgan is start him at right guard in year 1. I would not do it. The day that I'm recording this, he got some snaps at left guard with Elton Jenkins out. I can smell that. I'm good with that. I understand. I get what the Rock is cooking there. I'm all right with that. Right guard, no thank you. I don't need him switching hands and switching sides. Who starts at safety across from Xavier McKinney, I think, is interesting. Is it Bullard? Is Bullard actually in competition with Keyshawn to play slot? I don't think so. Could be. Where does Oladapo fit in? Where does Evan Williams fit in? Where does Anthony Johnson Jr. fit in? He's, got the most experience back there as far as being a Packer. Now they're switching systems to Halfley, but got to remember too, Anthony Johnson Jr. was another one of those guys where day 2 pick, early day 3 guy gets picked in round 7. I didn't love him that much, but people did. Chris Collinsworth thought he was a first round guy. It means nothing once you're on the team, but I wouldn't just discount Anthony Johnson Jr. just because they brought in 3 other safeties. I think he should be mentioned with Evan Williams and Kitano Oladapo and Javon Bullard as part of whatever competition you want to talk about. As a corner convert, he's definitely more of a free safety type. Like, he's not a banger. He's not a Cam Chancellor by any stretch, or a Kitano Oladapo if we're talking about guys that are on the team. But I think he needs to be mentioned. So that other safety spot, and then certainly the desire and the hope and the prayer that whoever wins the cornerback spot across from Jair Alexander plays well and holds on to it. And now, if it's an open competition, Valentine versus Stokes, or if it's just Valentine versus Stokes, or if they're basically treating Stokes like you can't lose your job due to injury and now you're healthy, so you're the starter because you were the starter when you got hurt. I wouldn't do that, but maybe. Seems to be the way they're rolling now. Having Stokes run out there with Ja with the ones. That's a pretty important one. Everything else to me is rotational, even the wide receiver room, right? So like Watson versus Dobbs is not something I care about. Kraft versus Musgrave is not something I care about. I don't know. The other one I guess would be like, who is the Mike? It's not as important as it used to be, but it's sort of important, right? If you're going to tell me that the 2 guys that they've invested the most in at linebacker are both going to play outside, and Edgerrin Cooper and Quay, okay. Hopper going to play the Mike? Eric Wilson going to play the Mike? Isaiah McDuffie going to play the Mike? So that's interesting to me. Okay. What are the top RJ Surdick? What are the top 3 threats to the Packers season in 2024? I'm going to assume that this is more of like within the building, or what, bad things that could happen to the Packers, most because of the second part of this question is, what are the scenarios in which Green Bay wins a maximum of 5 games? I mean, first and foremost, the Jordan Love injury. Unless he just completely turns into a pumpkin, because the way that he played in the first half of the year, they were a 2-5 team that you can absolutely go 5-12 playing like Jordan Love was playing early. But I continue to believe that I was wrong about Jordan Love. I continue to believe that was a true development track. And the reason he played better in the second half of the season and in the playoffs was because he was getting used to being a starter. He was developing, not some random set of data where the first half was bad, second half was good. He's no more likely to be the second half quarterback. I think he is more likely to be the second half quarterback. I think if Green Bay only wins 5 games, it's because he got hurt. Now, I think Michael Pratt can win 6 or 7 games with this roster. I really do. It's a lot to ask of a 7th round rookie, but look at what Brock Purdy's been able to do with the 49ers. I don't know that I believe Green Bay's roster is on the 49ers level, but it's closer than people might think. And so if you believe a guy like Brock Purdy we just saw it. I mean, if you believe Brock Purdy can win 13 games with the San Francisco 49ers, I think Michael Pratt could win 7 games with the Green Bay Packers, 8 games with the Green Bay Packers. So that's what happened there. And I think it'd have to be a number of things. Like Love goes down, Ja gets hurt again, Christian gets hurt again. They get super thin at tackle, like maybe Sheed and Tom go down. Something bad happens to Gary, something bad happens to X. It's injuries. This roster, I think, is as good as it has been since 2014, and that is high praise for me. I still struggle with that 2014 team not winning the title. This group is talented as hell, truly. I mean, there's some question at second corner and at nickel corner. They got dudes, man. I mean, they're good. This Green Bay Packers team is good, and I wonder if people even understand quite how good they have a chance to be. Very 2011-y on offense, and I don't think people quite understand that. I know that's hyperbolic. It's maybe blasphemous, but none of those 2011 guys were ever accused of being like the guy. And you get even just the slightest bit of health luck, and even just the slightest bit of progression, a little jump for Wicks, a little jump for Reed. healthy Christian, a little jump from Dobbs, a little jump from Kraft and Musgrave, and they get even better than what the second half version of that team was on offense. I don't know about setting all the records the 2011 team did, but from a 6 deep spot on the passing tree, 6 deep, without even talking about Bo Melton, 6 deep of guys that you took in the first 5 rounds that you really believe in, and then add 2 years ago's rushing champ, who's not even like 28, to that mix with a really exciting third round rookie in Marshawn Lloyd. This is as balanced and deep as this team has been. And I really am not joking when I say that Michael Pratt could win 7 or 8 games with this roster if everything around him stayed the same. If everybody else stayed reasonably healthy and something terrible happened to Jordan Love, I still think 6, 7, 8 games from Michael Pratt in the win column. And I know people, you're insane. Wow, look at how sort of afloat they stayed with Scott Tolzien and Brett Hundley. And this team is better than those from a holistic roster standpoint. And they have a better coach. Okay. Joseph, who's going to have the biggest impact year one for this year's draft? Cooper. Unless Jordan Morgan beats out Sheed and plays super, super well, plays every game and is just as good as he was pass protecting at Arizona immediately. Cooper, to me, I don't care what, and I know he's like rotating in right now in OTAs. I don't care what they're doing, 4-2-5 nickel, 4-3 base, whatever. I think Cooper plays every snap on defense. And if Quay plays every snap on defense too, cool. But I think Edgerrin Cooper plays every snap on defense, and I think there's a chance that he becomes the first off-ball linebacker in a while to win NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. That's how highly I think of him. Again, I don't love using a top 50 pick on an off-ball linebacker, especially when you just did what you did with Quay and all the money you just gave Devondre. Edgerrin Cooper is that good. And I think like Bullard has a chance, right? Marshawn Lloyd has a chance. But not even gun to my head. Just I think best odds easily Edgerrin Cooper. Cheese Fiend. We've talked about this. Do you think there's a correlation between the Packers taking older guys than they usually do and the fact that those guys were on rosters during COVID? I think it's a number of things. I think they have done a good job of adapting and understanding just conceptually that guys are older now. You got a free COVID year. The transfer portal guys end up moving around to better situations. You have NIL where guys can make up to $500,000 or even more by staying in school. So that rookie contract no longer becomes as exciting. You know, you're making $0 in college. Well, why don't I jump now? And even if I'm a mid-round pick, I can make $700,000. Why don't I just get $600,000 from an Ohio State booster right now? Play one more year in the sun. I'm the king of campus. And then roll to the NFL after that. Free COVID year, NIL. And again, I think Green Bay thinks they're good. And that's why I think you saw the 22, 23, 24-year-old draft picks in this class. They think Evan Williams can help right now. They think Jacob Monk can be ready next year. They think that Kitano Ladapo and Tyron Hopper can help them immediately. Travis Glover, they think he might be a swing tackle right now. Now, these guys are not all going to hit, but the idea that a 24-year-old man is more ready for pro football than a 21-year-old man makes a lot of GD sense. And I think that they are aware of that. Yes. And it was not the way that they do business. So yes, this is an astute observation. Thank you, Cheese Fiend. Tim, even with the safety help taken during the draft and the signing of X, in your opinion, do you think the Packers should sign another veteran safety in case none of the rookies pan out? No. The only thing that I would say would be if they get into a spot where they just say, okay, Keyshawn is our returner. We're going to use him as a backup to Jaden Reed as the gadget guy on offense. They ran one offensive play for him last year. And if they basically say, Keyshawn, you are an emergency player only on defense, Javon Bullard is now our slot corner. Evan Williams is now our slot corner. We have a Javon Bullard versus Evan Williams competition for slot corner. Then you can talk to me about Micah Hyde. You can talk to me about Justin Simmons. You can talk to me about the number of what seem to be reasonably effective safeties still out there on the market. And by the way, I don't think that's the road they're going down. They being Matt, they being Jeff Hafley, they being the Green Bay Packers have talked effusively about being ready to use Keyshawn Nixon on defense and thinking that they can get more out of him. So if Keyshawn stays a nickel, I think he has a backup with tremendous upside in Kalen King. And I think your 5 safeties, unless you're going to keep, a veteran like Zane Anderson around just to run down and smack somebody on special teams, I think it's super obvious that your free safety body types are Javon Bullard and Evan Williams. And then your strong safety body types are Katana Ladapo, Xavier McKinney, and you have 3 free safety body types in Evan Williams, Anthony Johnson Jr., and Javon Bullard, and then you have your 2 strong safety body types in Xavier McKinney and Katana Ladapo, and those are the 5 safeties that you roll with. And then your corners, Jair, Valentine, Stokes, Kalen King, and you kind of roll that way. And then, of course, Keyshawn Nixon being that 6th guy, starting at nickel, returning your kicks, occasional offensive weapon, maybe. I don't know. But unless they, like I said, basically remove Keyshawn from the defensive formula, which it sure as hell doesn't seem like they're doing, and take either Evan Williams or Bullard away from the safety room, I just don't think so, because you also have to understand roster numbers. And I think, to me, it's obvious that they're going to keep 6 corners, right? King, Nixon, Valentine, Stokes, Alexander. You're not going to keep 12 defensive backs. So you're really going to bring in what might be a completely washed up Justin Simmons to release Anthony Johnson Jr. I know AJJ is a 7th round pick, but a lot of people view him differently than that. I'm not doing that. I'm rolling with the 5 guys that I mentioned, unless you're taking away one of my safeties and making him a nickel or making him a dime. Then we can have a conversation about a Micah Hyde. We can have a conversation about a Justin Simmons. Not a dumb question, though. Not at all. War Daddy, what are you most excited about heading into training camp? The defense. I think you can be excited. I think you should be excited about the offense. I think you should be excited that, Stokes and Christian went to, Madison and theoretically got healthy and figured out this leg asymmetry and, did all these things. But the defense. You add an Edgerrin Cooper. You add a Javon Bullard. You add, I would say Xavier McKinney is probably the biggest free agent signing since Reggie White. I think it's incredibly unlikely that he's more impactful than Charles Woodson. But at the time, Wood was like a scrap heap. That was the only kind of player that Ted Thompson got. I think McKinney's a higher profile signing than when they effed up the Joe Johnson signing. I think he's a higher profile signing than Amos, than Billy Turner, than Z, than Preston. This was the best player at their most important position of need. It's a huge deal. And of course, getting rid of Joe Barry and installing Jeff Hafley's system, which I think, I was joking about this with the Jakes, Jacob Morley and Jacob Westendorf in the chat. They actually, and Brian has talked about this, they actually kind of drafted like crap for a Barry system. Tons of one gap defensive linemen like Devontae Wyatt and Lucas Van Ness. And frankly, even I don't think Kenny Clark wants to 2 gap. Like tons of penetrating defensive linemen in a read and react scheme, linebackers that aren't really that great at read and react, safeties that can't fill the alley like Darnell Savage, corners that should be playing man like Jair Alexander. Like they drafted, and Brian has talked about this, like we don't draft for scheme. We try to draft the best players possible. Well, then your head coach shouldn't hire Joe Barry. So all of those things has me really excited. I'm very excited about Javon Bullard, what he can bring. Very excited about Edgerrin Cooper, what he can bring. But then just simple development of guys at key positions. Like I'm interested to see what Carrington Valentine can do. But more than that, 1st round picks, high value guys. Can Quay take a step? What's year 2 of Lucas Van Ness look like? What's your 3 of Devontae Wyatt look like? Guys that, should be game wreckers or at least like, sniffing Pro Bowl status. Guys, that's what you want when you take guys in round 1. Um, I think they all fit better in a Jeff Hafley system. Of course, people think, well, you just think Barry's an idiot. Sure, but there are successful split safety Fangio schemes in the league. They exist. Like, not every team that has a good defense is running single high looks. The Packers didn't draft very well for a split safety look, and I don't think they had a very good split safety coach. Like, I don't think Joe Barry is very good at his job. That's been done to death by me. So it's the defense, 100%. I'm very, very excited to see what they're able to do. Massive, massive, massive personnel upgrades, I think, at the linebacker position and at the safety position. Because I think Dre Campbell was just cooked. I think Edge Cooper is just on another stratosphere than what the last 2 years of Dre have been. Hopefully you get development from Quay. McDuffie's not going to get any worse, and Tyron Hopper is just a wild card at this point. But really, it's about the upgrade from Devondre Campbell to Edgerrin Cooper, and more than anything, the upgrade from like Jonathan Owens to one of the best 3 safeties alive, and Xavier McKinney is huge. Reinvigorating Jair Alexander is huge, and that front, they can be terrifying. You talk about, I talked about a NASCAR package with Kenny and Lucas Van Ness and Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary. I didn't even talk about what your 3 could look like from Kingsley Enagbare, who's not a super athlete, but a wonderful technician. And year 2 of Carl Brooks, baby. He's good. And by the way, they still have a 3rd round lottery ticket in Colby Wooden. They might be something up front. We'll let this one run as long as I have questions, just because this is the last one. Sorry, Andy. Tyler, are there any specific tendencies Green Bay has wavered on when it comes to drafting that you'll take into consideration for 2025 prospects? Not really. Not really. They did kind of what they do. They always have, not always, but they often have one guy that makes you scratch your head early. This year, that was Tyron Hopper. Not only from we didn't think he should be ranked this high, but from a athletic testing perspective, he was a weird fit. The rest of the guys weren't. Jordan Morgan was right in that thing that we talk about with height and weight from the Pac-12. He made a ton of sense. Bullard was a Georgia Bulldog defensive back. That's very Goody-ish. A little short, but like he very, very similar to Darnell Savage. So not anything that they haven't done before. Edgerrin Cooper, very good athlete. I think that made a ton of sense. Marshawn Lloyd, I think, made a ton of sense. Evan Monk was super Packersy, right? And then they did what they do a ton, which is as you get late, they take weird stuff. Kalen King, probably too slow, but in round 7, whatever. Travis Glover, not a good enough athlete. Where they took him, whatever. They did what they normally do. I would say up until Evan Williams, and even I think Katano Ladapo is pretty close to what they do. Like Evan Williams was a tier 1 safety fit if you bought the draft guide. So you should have, if you read that, you knew that he at least fit what they did. But they didn't do anything weird. Like they didn't take what I was interested in because of the amount of them available. They didn't take a super light corner, fought endlessly with people telling me about 340-pound tackles, Amarius Mims, whomever else. They didn't take one of those. They took a super Packers-y offensive lineman. Like, no, I think for the most part, other than, like I said, kind of making peace with NIL, making peace with the transfer portal, and understanding that Green Bay is probably not going to be as ageist as they used to be. Other than that, I don't think I really noticed a ton from this class that would move me off of a lot of kind of our research that we went in. They did what I kind of said when I wrote that last piece, which is this will be about 80% of their class, meaning 1 out of every 5 times they'll do something weird. And that was Tyron Hopper. In the past, it was Jay Sternberger, Richard Rodgers, Amari Rodgers, Kyrie Thornton, right? Weird stuff. And the names that I'm listing are guys that didn't work out great. So you wonder if they're not kind of learning from that a little bit as well. And unfortunately, I believe they're going to learn from it with the Hopper pick, but happy to be wrong. Hope to be wrong. about that one. Aaron, okay, of all the players that the Packers have selected in the time you've been doing this, who are you the most correct about and incorrect about? Most correct. Carl Brooks is one, although that's an extremely small sample size. Um, I guess it was high on Wicks. Trying to look back at. Let me just really quick pull up their draft history. Um, so I would say I've been doing this professionally since 2015, as far as actually getting paid for my draft analysis. Um, so guys, I was right on. Um, Most right on, because the ones that I was wrong on are easy ones. Those are easy ones, and I will talk about them because they're important. But Sheed, I guess, is really making me look super smart. Aaron Jones made me look very very smart. Um, that was a good one. Uh, you know, um, Christian when he's healthy makes me look smart. Um, just because I was talking about him as a high second round guy when everybody else was talking him as a fifth round guy. Kingsley Anagbare has made me look super smart. I appear to be very right about Kingsley. I appear to be very right about Sheed. I appear to be right about Christian. Unfortunately, currently I appear to be right about Eric Stokes and Quay Walker in a not great way. Um, Musgrave made me look smart. Again, small sample size. Um, Wicks has made me look pretty smart, and Carl Brooks has made me look super smart. And the two ones that I've whiffed on, I'll mention three, I guess. Um, I was super high on Josh Jackson. Just didn't get it right. He just, I think there was some coaching stuff, but ultimately, I think he would have figured it out. For as much as people need decent defensive backs, I think if there was something there, he would have figured it out. Like I would have played zone with him, and I would have had him just play outside corner. Having him play nickel was insane. Maybe try him at free safety. I don't know, but like that ship has passed. I don't know what Josh is up to now, but him being the nickel was just Looney Tunes from Mike Pettin. I don't understand what they were doing there. But again, like I'm not going to put that all on coaching. I think if he was going to work out, he would have worked out somewhere else, and he didn't. And so I got that one wrong. To a degree, although I did have a first round grade and ranked him inside my top 30, I was really, really pissed that they took Rashawn Gary over Brian Burns. I'd still probably rather have Burns, but me being really, really pissed in the moment was dumb. Gary's been very good. Obviously, got a massive second contract. Been an unbelievable leader for the Packers. Been productive. Didn't end last season probably on the note that you would have wanted from Rashawn, but very excited about his future with Green Bay. Very excited about him with his hand back in the dirt. I think he can be a really good player. And again, I had a first round grade on him. It's not like I whiffed tremendously, but you know, Jordan Walsh, a couple questions here to wrap it up. And like I said, we're gonna get to all the questions um, just because this is the last one, and I'm not ready for it to be quite over. So Jordan's got three questions here, and that will be it for us. Which rookie most positively affects the roster if he hits? That's easy. It's Jordan Morgan. Because if he hits, he is Bakhtiari, right? Bakhtiari is borderline Hall of Famer, so that's high, but he is an undersized left tackle who doesn't get beat in pass pro. He's left tackle Zach Tom as opposed to right tackle Zach Tom, who's actually Zach Tom. And they didn't take anybody else high at a premium position. Right? They took a linebacker, took a safety, took a running back, took guys that the league has at least identified as like their position doesn't matter very much as it pertains to winning. I guess the most obvious answer is Michael Pratt, right? If Michael Pratt is like Brock Purdy plus and something happens to Jordan Love, if Michael Pratt hits, he's a quarterback. But in all seriousness, it's Jordan Morgan. It's Jordan Morgan because I think even if Kalen King hits, it's going to be as a nickel. you know, and who else has really like I guess if Javon Bullard ends up hitting as like a true Earl Thomas free safety, which I don't even think is the projection, that could be super valuable. But ultimately, the rookie that most positively affects the roster if he hits is Jordan Morgan. 3 years from now, which rookie will we be talking about the Packers needing to re-sign before they reach free agency? Uh I don't know. That's a good question because, as I mentioned, like a lot of non-premium position guys, a lot of guys like Marshawn Lloyd could turn out to be very good, and I would still be like, yeah, just draft a back. Edgerrin Cooper could turn out to be very good, and I would say, please don't give him Fred Warner money. Um, I, is Jordan Morgan going to stick at tackle? That's a question. So I'm gonna go with Javon Bullard. Just because you saw like what Xavier McKinney got. I think there's a really high floor for Javon Bullard. Whether he ends up as a nickel, whether he ends up as a free safety, I think he's going to be valuable. I think he has a high floor. I think he has a reasonably high ceiling as well. McKinney will be older, when we're talking about re-signing some of those guys, and just between Oladapo, Evan Williams, and Javon Bullard, based on draft position alone, Bullard has the highest chance of sticking. Again, I have fear about paying a running back. I have fear about paying a linebacker. So for me, it's not going to be Hopper. It's not going to be Edge Cooper. It's not going to be Marshawn Lloyd. Um, I think Jordan Morgan is going to end up as a left guard, so it's not going to be Jordan Morgan for me. My answer is Javon Bullard. Boy, here's the last one. 2024 will be Goot's best draft class if, and he says, please exclude the love class from consideration. The love class was kind of stinky, other than the quarterback. I guess if he has just an incredibly high hit rate, and what I mean by that is I don't think it's going to be, because I don't think anybody's going to touch this 2023 class. Because that was premium positions, especially if you consider wide receiver a premium position. Um, and I think you can kind of lump like what Musgrave could be in with wide receivers because some of these top tight ends like Hawkinson and Kittle are getting paid. Travis Kelce got paid. Um, that was a pass rusher, 3 wide receivers. Um, the really like a big deal. That class was important. The 2023 class that hit some high notes, and 2 potential interior pass rush guys in Carl Brooks and Colby Wooden. Um, they hit some like important stuff and might have hit at an extremely high rate. If I think both, to me right now, both Musgrave and Kraft are starting number 1 tight ends. That's their track. Now, they're not going to be that for the Packers because they're going to play together. But like I think, if a team was going to look at them, however many years down the road, like I wouldn't be surprised at all if a team in 3 years is trying to sign Tucker Kraft to start for them at tight end, and Green Bay re-signs Musgrave, right, and replaces Kraft, or flip that, whichever way. Um, but I think hitting the reason I don't think 2024 will be is likely to be Goot's best class is the non-premium aspect of these players. So unbelievable hit rate, unbelievable batting average in both 2022 and 2023, but super important positions. Interior pass rusher, Devontae Wyatt. And Chris Jones, Aaron Donald, like JJ Watt, you don't need me to tell you how important the interior pass rush is if you're trying to do big things. Um, how many Super Bowl rings are on the hands of Aaron Donald and Chris Jones? And I know a lot of that has to do with Pat, but it's an important thing. Number 1 wide receiver, Christian Watson, like that's what they were going for. Big, important positions. Now, Zach Tom, franchise tackle, left or right, incredibly important position. This class, if Bullard ends up being Micah Hyde, I guess that's really good. If Evan Williams ends up being Micah Hyde, and I mean that in like not necessarily a style, but more of a where do you play? A little bit of slot, a little bit of free. But like If Jordan Morgan ends up being a guard, that's cool, I guess, if he hits, but it's a guard. Marshawn Lloyd is never going to be anything but a running back. Bullard is never going to be anything but a good safety. Hopper and Cooper are never going to be anything but, off-ball linebackers. Same for the rest of the safeties. Travis Glover ends up being an NFL tackles or NFL caliber swing tackle. That's still great, but it's not like Zach Tom. Jacob Monk ends up being your starting center. That's the least important position on the offensive line. And please don't take this as I'm criticizing this draft class, but this was like very steak and potatoes. We're just going to do what this team needs to do. We hit the big spots hard. Got our quarterback in Jordan Love. We think we've got our tackles. We think we've got our pass rushers. We think we've got our corners. That last one you can argue with. We went and got our safety in Xavier McKinney. Let's fill in the roster and take multiple shots at it. We need safeties. We need linebackers. We need another back. Lower valued positions could end up being good players, could propel them to a Super Bowl. I just don't think there's any way we're going to look back at this class and go, that was the one. I think you can look back at 2022. If Watson can stay healthy and Wyatt can take the next step, I think you can look, and Dobbs is obviously a part of that. Zach Tom is obviously a part of that. Go back and look at 23. If, Kraft and Musgrave become the non-murdery version of Kraft or of Gronk and Hernandez, Jaden Reed, Dontavion Wicks, if he becomes 89% of what you were getting with Devontae Adams, you look at 2023's class, 2024's class to me is just too much steak and not enough sizzle. They did not try to hit a home run with this class. In my opinion. Okay. Our time has come to an end here on the Daily Draft. I don't think, again, nothing's official. I don't think that this is the end for me with the Pack a Day podcast. And I mean that obviously the Daily Draft will return, or the plan certainly is for it to return as we approach next year's offseason. But I don't know that I'm gone. With that said, though, this was awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to everybody that came out to Badger State. Thank you to Badger State. Without them, this would not have been possible. I've always done shows with a partner, Gilbert, right? Or the Jacobs, or my buddy Ryan. Done a lot of shows with Andy. Didn't know how, just my face. No, we did shows with both Jen Mackey and Perry Goldstein. Those were great, but those had film, right? Those had highlights. Like, the challenge of me doing a daily show of just my face looking at this camera and talking to you about Packers football was a little bit intimidating. And I'm not saying this to brag, but like I can't describe it as anything more than just a tremendous success. We did great. The view numbers were great. The feedback was beyond great. 85% of the comments, I appreciated. All the love on X, love on Twitter, I appreciated that. Again, the people that came to Badger State, the crowd size was truly humbling. I would never have guessed that many people would come to see me and Andy just talk ball. And the folks that actually came there could not have been more gracious, could not have been better people. Very glad that we were able to do a kind of a merchandise dump for them and get rid of some of the old Packer Report stuff and go to this direct thing. And I just want to say thank you. This has been awesome. I am hopeful and working on it not being goodbye for too long. But at this point, it's just about June. In fact, by the time you're watching this, probably is June. And that is time to stop talking about the NFL draft and the daily draft for 2024 will come to a close for the last time. Thanks so much. If you are watching, if you are listening on the podcast side, we appreciate you as well. Check me out. I'm at Ross Uglem on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can check us out at Packer Report 66 on the very same social media channel, or at PackerReport.com, where you can become a VIP member, which would be tremendously appreciated by us. You can also check out our merchandise store, which has lots of old school, cool vibe stuff. Link should be available right here in the video description or the podcast description. Do everything you're supposed to do. here at the Pack a Day Podcast YouTube feed. Like, subscribe, click the bell, get the notifications so that you can get all of the Packers content that you require on a daily basis. Have a great offseason, guys, and go Pack Go.